the non-stop shelling in Ukraine and loss of life and property, there are hopes of truce between the two nations. Reports have now suggested that Ukraine and Russia have made a 15-point peace plan that includes a ceasefire, a withdrawal of Russian troops if Ukraine declares neutrality and will not join the NATO. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that the country has succeeded in their Ukraine operation. Putin also said that Russia has no plans to occupy Ukraine and that the operation was done for self-defense. The remarks come shortly after International Court of Justice slammed Russia in its ruling. The ICJ said that Russia should suspend all the military operations and also ensure that any military or armed units supported by it take no further steps to continue. The order passed will have a binding effect and invoke international legal obligations of the state. The court has further asked both the nations to refrain from any action that may escalate the situation. Reaching the ICJ verdict, Ukraine President Zelensky said that Ukraine has gained complete victory in court, adding that if Russia fails to comply, it will isolate itself further.
All American ports should be closed for Russian goods. Peace is more important than income, and we have to defend this principle in the whole world. We already became part of the anti-war coalition, a big anti-war coalition that unites many countries, dozens of countries, those who reacted to, in principle, to President Putin's decision to invade our country. But we need to move on and do more. We need to create new tools to respond quickly and stop the war, the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. We propose that the United States sanctions all politicians in the Russian Federation who remain in their offices and do not cut ties with those who are responsible for the aggression against Ukraine. From State Duma's members to the last official who has lack of morale to break the state terror. All American companies must leave Russia from their market, leave their market immediately because it is flooded with our blood. Ukraine is grateful to the United States for its overwhelming support, for everything that your government and your people have done for us, for weapons and ammunition, for training, for finances, for leadership in the free world, which helps us to pressure the aggressor economically. I'm grateful to President Biden for his personal involvement, for his sincere commitment to the defense of Ukraine and democracy all over the world. I am grateful to you for the resolution which recognizes all those who commit crimes against Ukraine, against the Ukrainian people as war criminals. However, now, it is true, in the darkest time for our country, for the whole Europe, I call on you to do more. New packages of sanctions are needed constantly, every week, until the Russian military machine stops.
After 3 weeks of waging war, Ukraine and Russia are finally on negotiation table. After 4 rounds of inconclusive talks, the two nations have come down to a 15-point peace plan. Will the delegations from both the nations broker truce? That's the big question. Here's a look.
After 21 days of raging war, there is some hope for truce. Russia and Ukraine are finally in a mood to negotiate. After 4 inconclusive rounds of talks, the 5th one seemed to be a step in the direction of peace. Russia and Ukraine are now trying to chalk out a compromise formula, including neutrality status for Ukraine as one of the options. Under neutral status, Ukraine would become part of European Union, but not NATO, like Austria and Sweden. Kremlin has given the green signal to this option.
Он сейчас, по большому счету, он сейчас всерьез обсуждается в увязке, конечно же, с гарантиями безопасности. Это ровно то, что вот президент Путин говорил в феврале на одной из своих пресс-конференций. Любые возможные варианты, любые общеприемлемые.
Kyiv, however, has ruled out the Russian proposal. Ukraine wants a legally binding security pact signed by international partners. Ukrainian and Russian delegations have come up with the 15-point tentative peace plan. It lists the issue that needs to be resolved before a compromise. These include Ukraine declaring neutrality, limiting the Ukrainian armed forces, renouncing Kyiv's ambitions to join NATO, and prohibiting Ukraine from hosting foreign military bases in exchange of security. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has claimed the talks are heading in the right direction.
Це важливо. Складно, але важливо, тому що будь-яка війна завершується угодою. Зустрічі тривають. Як мені доповідають, позиції на переговорах звучать вже реалістичніше. Проте ще необхідний час, щоб рішення були в інтересах саме України.
While talks are going on, Russia's relentless bombing of Ukraine continues. The question everyone is asking now is, how soon can the two warring nations reach an agreement? Bureau Report, India Today.
The Russia-Ukraine war has been raging for 3 weeks now. Moscow continues to rain missiles on Ukraine. Outman and outgun Kiev is still holding its fort. While the diplomatic talks are on, the world is asking when and how will this war end. India Today is now decoding 10 possible scenarios that may end the war. Here is a report on it.
Three weeks and peace is still a distant dream in Ukraine. Cities continue to be bombarded relentlessly by Russian missiles. As the humanitarian crisis deepens, India Today decodes the 10 possible scenarios in which the war could end. Scenario 1. Putin bombs Ukraine into submission at a massive human cost and installs a puppet government in Kyiv. Scenario 2. Zelensky is forced to quit and a new government takes over in Ukraine. Scenario 3. Kyiv is made neutral, irrespective of who rules it, or Ukraine is demilitarized like Austria. Scenario 4. Putin is forced to halt what he calls military operations with altered status quo, allowing talks and diplomacy to take effect. Scenario 5. Ukraine is forced to recognize the two breakaway regions of Donetsk and Luhansk, as well as Kherson, as independent regions captured by Russian forces. Scenario 6. Putin escalates war by using chemical weapons or targeting West's arms depots in neighboring Poland, prompting NATO to get involved in the war directly. Scenario 7. Putin scales back his goals in the face of a crumbling domestic economy, and Ukraine becomes what Afghanistan was to Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev, or the US and its allies after 2001. Scenario 8. Ukraine registers an unlikely heroic victory with continued little weapon support and humanitarian aid supplies from the West. Scenario 9. Sanctions by the West cripple Russia's economy, making Putin extremely unpopular, leading to an uprising in his country or even a coup taking place. Scenario 10. Cornered by NATO and the European Union and depleted of weaponry, a frustrated Putin goes for nuclear strikes, potentially leading to World War III and widespread catastrophe. Bureau Report, India Today.
Bruised and battered Ukraine refuses to bow down. Despite relentless Russian strikes, Ukrainian spirit to fight back remains undeterred. This war-torn nation is doing everything it can to stall the Russian advances, even as the enemy troops encircle Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Here's a detailed report.
Three weeks of hellscape. A ravaged country, flattened and punished by a superpower. Its capital under siege. Armed forces in disarray. Cities burning. But Ukraine continues to show remarkable resilience. Ukrainian guns are far from falling silent. These night images of incredible Ukrainian counter-strike. These night images of incredible Ukrainian counter-strike show how the overwhelmed, outmanned and outgunned nation is still fighting back. Still taking the war into enemy camps. With a brave and determined fight back. The barrage of attacks so far successful in stalling a full-blown takeover of capital Kyiv. By the far superior and much better armed Russian invading force. Ukraine soldiers with tank-killing guns were seen destroying Russian armored carriers and tanks with the trademark Z symbols. The Ukrainian projectiles landing with deadly precision, taking out the Russian combat vehicles. Ukrainian defense also released video of Russian supplies and columns of equipment for its convoy in outskirts of Kyiv, coming under massive bombardment. Drone images capturing the full impact of large-scale explosions.
You know, Ukrainian forces are highly motivated. They're fighting on their own ground, and they're also highly mobile, unlike the Russian forces, which are sort of not mobile at all, really.
While fighting back hard, Ukraine has not abandoned peace efforts. President Zelensky asserted once again that his country has no plan to join NATO.
We realize that Ukraine will not become a member of NATO. We understand this. We are adequate people. Kyiv needs new formats of interaction with the West and separate security guarantees.
Bruised, battered, bleeding, yet biting back. Can Ukraine still do the unthinkable? With Rajesh Pawar in War Zone Kyiv. Bureau Report, India Today.
With the Russia-Ukraine war entering day 22, children continue to remain the biggest victims. The invasion is turning a child a refugee every second. The data released by UNICEF recently states that around 1.5 million children have fled Ukraine in the past 3 weeks. As Russia intensifies the attack on Ukraine, there seems to be no end to the heartbreaking images. The neighboring countries have also opened the doors for traumatized young refugees. For some, what was a normal childhood just about a few weeks ago has now turned into a nightmare with an uncertain future. The images on your screen come from the capital city of Kyiv, where down a dusty basement hidden from the shelling has become shelter for the newborns. The place hosts 21 babies born to surrogates. Nurses are taking care of these babies as the fighting has made it just impossible for their parents to reach them.